his lie of omission
Yeah.
creates this cascading effect, the ripples off the stone thrown into the pond of, wait a second, if he's hiding this, what else is he hiding?
Mhm. Welcome to our latest Book Reporter Talks to interview, where our guest today is J.T. Ellison, and we're going to be talking about her latest thriller, her sixth standalone novel, It's One of Us. Starred Library Journal review says this: Ellison spotlights the issue of infertility, then adds betrayal, obsession, and familial ties that bind to create a tension-filled story with an intriguing theme. Readers will race through the pages to an end that they didn't see coming. And I'm all there on that. I am right till the end, folks. You're sitting there with lots of thoughts about this book. So welcome, JT. So nice to have you here.
Thank you. It's so good to be here. It's great to see you.
I know. It's like, wait, we haven't seen each other in a very long time.
I know, it's been a while.
Long time. So let's start by you telling us about It's One of Us. Let's not have me do it. Let's have you do the story.
So It's One of Us is the story of a young couple who are trying and failing to have a baby. Mm-hmm. They are 6 rounds into IVF, and it opens that Olivia has had a miscarriage, and she's going downstairs to tell Park that she has failed him yet again, when there's a knock at the door, and it's the police looking to speak with their son. But that's a problem because they don't have any children.
Right.
And everything spools out from there. And it is definitely about betrayal and lies. And her husband happens to have been a sperm donor when he was in college and didn't tell her, mm-hmm. and holds the deception, which is, it's just unthinkable. At least at that moment you could say, oh my gosh, this has happened. He's had many opportunities to let her know.
Right.
And he has not. So what else is he hiding?
Yes. And then what is she hiding as well?
And what is she hiding? What is everybody hiding? There's a lot of points of view in this book, and everybody has something to lose.
That's exactly. Everybody's got something that they're hiding, something that they say something, it's going to move it in a different direction, something that could place blame on somebody else, point fingers. And you're really going back and forth as the reader the whole time. So every story has got this kernel of like, oh gosh, where did it get started? And I know some of this was personal, but beyond the personal, what was the idea that got you to say, let me write this book? Like, I've got to sit there and take on this story.
So the personal came first. I mean, my husband and I suffered from infertility, and I go into that in detail in the author's note of my story and how it plays into this. But I had been trying to tell the story a number of ways, and it's really infertility is much more of a women's fiction topic. Mm-hmm. It's not something that you see in a thriller. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't figure out how to layer that in and make it work. And I was trying to tell the story from Park's point of view. And Olivia appeared to me. She was walking down the beach. She had chinos on. She had dark hair. She had her arms wrapped around her, and she was so, so sad. And I needed to find out who this person was and why she was so sad. And it hit me, oh my gosh, this is Park's wife. And oh my gosh, this is her story. It's her story. It's not his. It's how he's betrayed her. And then the whole thing just kind of fell into my lap. It's kind of amazing. Sometimes when you get a character like that, it just, boom, combustible.
Yeah, and then who hides what from whom? Where we go from there, because everybody has their own layers of secrets going on in this book. And it's going to be a hard book to talk about, everybody, because I don't want to give too much away. We're going to have to be very guarded about this, because we know you haven't read it. If it was a year and a half from now, we're having a whole totally different conversation.
Right.
So did you know in advance that those who donate sperm, it can be done, used in multiple numbers of fertilizations? Or did you think, I thought it was like maybe limited to 3 or 4? No,
it's supposed to be limited. I mean, the ethical places that do this do limit it, but there's always that outlier, right? There's always that company that sees profit and says, hey, we've got a donor that's really successful. And, all the people that we send him to get pregnant, have healthy babies, we're going to keep using him over and over. And part of this story is exactly that's what happened. And there was a case in Georgia that they did a really interesting book and podcast about, where the company knew that the donor was schizophrenic. and did not disclose it, allowed his profile that said he was, I think, a doctor educated at Harvard. I mean, just all the grandiosity that he had poured into his bio, and none of it was true. And when they found out, they didn't stop using his sperm.
Wow.
And so there's many more children than they're supposed to have. And B, they all now are at risk for mental illness. And it was an incredible story and it played into this. What I find interesting is the idea that, only a sperm donor can create a bad person. We have a lot of serial killers that come out of loving homes,
right?
Right, with a traditional, what used to be called a nuclear family, and all of that. It really doesn't. The whole nature nurture thing is kind of thrown out on its ear when you start looking at it from the scientific method. We're all technically product of sperm donors.
That's exactly.
If we want to, so it's just an odd subject to have in a thriller, but the plot is, and I can say this without, giving anything away, the son is the suspect in a murder. And obviously Park has more than one. Yeah.
More than one child is out there. And what's really interesting is you usually say, oh, the sperm donor, oh, he was tall, he's college educated, these kinds of things. Because I have friends who have chosen to have children on their own. And this is what they know about these people. But do you really know everything about these people? Or where are some of these other issues, starting to lie or whatever? And it's interesting because we regulate so much in the healthcare industry. I mean, so much is you can't do this, you can't do that. Try and do something and get away with it with an insurance company. How do we not regulate this? I mean, granted, it's supposed to be, but really?
I mean, no, there are no laws. There's no, overarching regulation. And now that's changing. It is changing. And that's a good thing. I mean, obviously there's been enough documentaries of the doctors that inseminated 100 women with their own, I'm glad that they're starting to look at this as an industry that needs regulation, because obviously you can't have this happening. And it seems to have happened over and over and over, especially while I was writing the book. I just kept getting these emails from my friends that knew I was writing this and said, oh my God, have you seen this? Have you seen this story? Have you seen this article? I was like, blowing up.
I was like, wait a second, I wasn't the catalyst of this, everybody, just so you know. This has already been going on.
This has been going on. I just took my story and layered it in.
Yeah, it's not a documentary, folks, that we're talking about here. So I love that Olivia is a home designer. And what drew you to have that as her career? Because it gets her out there with a project of her own, as child would be. I feel like you should be nurturing the child same way she's nurturing this home. Why home designer?
So a couple of reasons. One, I loved the metaphorical significance of she can build homes for other people, but her own womb can't be the home for a child, which is the thing she wants the most.
Okay.
But the other part is I really love watching design shows. I love, Saturday morning, it's our tradition. We have breakfast and then we sit down and we watch the shows of, people building things and designing houses and flipping houses and stuff. I've always been fascinated by it. I do not have that gene. I am missing the placement design gene.
Okay.
I can build things fine. Architecturally, I'm great. But when it comes to making them look pretty, I just don't have that. So I'm fascinated watching people who do. It's a gift. I mean, it's a real gift. And Olivia has that gift.
It's funny because sometimes you could be in a space and you see the space the way you see it and how you think it should be. And even in this office, there's this big space that's over here. And I had a big table in there. It was taking up, it was like a, 4 by 8 foot table that was sitting there. And when we first moved home with the office, I said, I don't know what to do with this space. And my friend said, just get rid of the table. And you end up with all this room, and you can make that for all your yarn and knitting supplies and make the rest your office. And until then, honestly, this desk was piled with all these things. But sometimes even in your home, you can't see the forest for the trees. You just can't. No. And somebody will walk in and say, move this. And you're like, why did I never see to do that all this time?
A friend of mine did the same thing. She walked in. My desk used to be in the middle of the room, in the power position facing the doors. And she walked in. She was like, oh, no. And she took the desk. She put it over here in the corner where I'm facing, moved everything around and said, here's your new Zoom shot. And I was like, Wow. Yeah, actually, you're right. It's really, really a good look.
How did I not do that sooner? Like, how did I?
Right. How did I not see that that would work perfectly? It's just incredible. Some people just have that eye. And like right now, I'm really into The Established Home, Jean Stoffer.
Okay.
My blood pressure, just when she starts talking, my blood pressure just goes down because she's just so lovely and so soft spoken. And she's got such a beautiful aesthetic. And she and her daughter, Grace, who works with her, they just congratulate each other on the beautiful things that they're doing. And I find that really powerful, really, for women to be holding up their hand and saying, I made this and it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Look, I love it. And the client's going to love it. We did a good job. I love hearing that. I love watching them say that.
Yeah.
So they're my favorite right
to each
now.
other. Yeah. And her name is Grace, of all things, of course, Grace and Grace. Okay. Now I need to ask, what is waterfall marble? And I'm trying to figure out, because you talk about this being in the kitchen and the waterfall marble. And I was like, okay, no, wait, I am totally missing what this looks like. But I was watching a show the other night and I was like, is that waterfall marble, the way that the lines are going down like this?
So yeah, it comes to the edge of the counter and the piece curves down. So you see there's no seam. It's in the veins in the marble continue down. It's really hard to do well, but when it's done, it just looks like a seamless piece of rock. And it's so cool. So yeah, that's her signature, is the waterfall.
Yeah, well, see, I did pick up on that. And I did pick up that, wait, she must really watch home design shows to be sitting there and talking about that piece. And I saw it on a show the other night. I said, is that what she's talking about? I want to take a little screenshot and send it to you. So we've got Park as her husband, and he's the ghostwriter. And what made you have him have this job? And I just love when his file is broken into, and like what he is afraid is going to be found about him, about writing for this person. So ghostwriting?
Yeah. So he's got this ironclad non-disclosure agreement. He is and purely ghosting, right? So his name isn't associated with the book at all. He just writes the books, and Barty Pekkanen is the big thriller writer, fabulous guy, owns a town, just really, made it big early on. And so he can afford to hire out people to just tell the stories for him while he goes off drinking and plays golf. I've also another really interesting metaphorical job, because if he was out there under his own name, he would be under a lot different kind of scrutiny than if he just gets to enjoy his craft, write these great books and put it out. But yes, it's going to be found out, and that's going to end everything for him, because his non-disclosure is that tight. So, and I just loved having him be a ghost. I just thought that was the perfect thing for somebody who wants to be creative but fly under the radar. He wants to fly under the radar.
He doesn't want anybody to really know everything that's going on. No. And he writes out in the shed in the yard, like he's not writing in the house. And I found that was interesting too, because he's not like in the house where she can be watching everything that he's doing, which starts to lead her head to, he's going, wait a second, what is Park doing outside now? If we're putting any, hold on a second. He hasn't told me about being a sperm donor. What else is he not telling me about? He's in the shed behind the house that I've created for him as this place that he can be by himself. What else don't I know? And I think that having that separate place and having him go not to an office where people watch him, but this place was such an interesting, thing for you to set up. Did you know that one right from the beginning? Like he's got to have a little bit of secrecy about him.
Absolutely. And I wanted, it's probably my own dream to have my own, shed, little cottage out in the back with a fireplace that I can go out and write and have no interruptions and everything. But it's one of those, his lie of omission creates this cascading effect, the ripples off the stone thrown into the pond of, wait a second, if he's hiding this, what else is he hiding? And yes, having him out in his own place that, she's got the code. She has the code to the safe. She can get into anything she wants, but she has trusted him long enough that she doesn't feel she needs to, until he clearly shows that he's not been telling her everything. And I think lies of omission are the worst kind.
Yeah,
absolutely. When you have a chance to come clean about something, come clean, right? Or preemptively admit something when you see that that's where it's going. She tells him, I want you to donate. I want you to have something of yourself left behind. It looks like I'm not going to be able to carry our baby. And he could have told her right then and there, I was a sperm donor in college. We're all good.
right.
And it doesn't. And I think that is what fractures them. That one tiny omission. The omission about his emissions.
That's a good one. That's a really good, that's a tagline for the back of the book.
Right.
But also she's got some things. We'll get back to that in a second, but there's something that happened with a woman who Park was dating when he was in college that merely made you doubt what was going on with him. I mean, this woman has been found dead. Like, we know this. And I often feel like you were trying to layer it and something happened there of, well, wait, this guy, like, is he really telling the truth or what really happened? And as soon as you hear one lie, you start to think about every truth and how can every truth become a lie? And that's what I started thinking, because, okay, he didn't tell her this one thing, but did he trust her with this other thing, or did he trust her with nothing? So
exactly. And it makes for a really complex character when you just don't know if they're telling the truth or not. Was he telling the truth to me? When I'm writing him, I don't know.
Right.
And that just made him a really dynamic, interesting character, with a lot of layers. This is a very emotionally layered book. There's a lot going on with each character, each one of them. You can drill deep and figure out, wow, they've got a lot happening here.
And so and I think that readers, if you're going to read, when you read this book, here's what you want to do is pay attention. Because this is not something, that 10 minutes before you fall asleep at night. No, because you have to read those 10 minutes again the next day, because it's one of these books you want to pay attention, because certain things are revealed to you pretty early and you think you got the whole game, but you're not close to the game. And the game just keeps evolving from there. And it's a little bit of a cat and mouse of, I know this about you, but I don't know that. I haven't admitted this that I did, because let's face it, Olivia hasn't been truthful to Park about something big that she did in her life, something bigger that she did in her life. And all these have been secrets as well. So at the same time, we're going through and we're thinking he's the villain for what he's done. And then you start to see, well, she's not so perfect after all.
And I mean, isn't that just who we are?
Yeah.
I mean, none of us are perfect, but yeah, everything that she has in her past has layered in to what's happening now. And it just, everything blows up in their faces.
Yep. And the two secrets she's got, she's painted as the good wife for so long. And everything is, oh, she's the good wife. Oh, she didn't have a child. Oh, we're so sad for her. Oh, we're so sad. And then you don't realize some of the things that she's done along the way that could compromise things in many, many, many different directions. So,
yeah.
So now we got the media all over this. And this is something that they're not used to, like the media calling you on the phone, the media tracking. Right. And if you're not used to every camera being outside your house, and how are you going to get through this? It becomes, wait a second, did you get me into this? You got me into this. This is the reason I can't go do my job. This is the reason. So it becomes even another character, is the media foistering up this story of what's going on. Because now we found out, okay, he's saying he doesn't have any children. Then she finds out his sperm donor. And then how many kids are there? And then we dig even deeper. But the media starts being able to do its own little game of pushing this in another direction, because we see so many times that they can start in the wrong direction. I mean, there are many things about the Idaho killings, and I bring that one up, as the media and the bloggers and the YouTubers and the TikTokers were all headed in one direction. It wasn't where we were going at all. And it was interesting to see, though, how the media can incite something going on that's not, really where it's going to be. And you actually bring up, like, these people knocking on the doors and pulling out, like, here I am to talk to you. What are you going to say to them? I am guilty.
Yeah. What do you say? I mean, but some people are going to leap at that opportunity, and some people are going to slam the door in their face. You just never know. But, again, it's the tightening of the screw, right? It's every little turn of the screw puts them in a worse situation. And that's my job as a writer, right? You are in the most untenable situation. Your life is falling apart. Your world is blown up. The person you love has been lying to you. You don't have your teammate. You don't have your partner. How can I make it worse?
What can I possibly do?
What can I possibly do to make it worse? And that's, that's the fun of writing these kinds of stories, right?
Yeah. She's having too good a day. How can I tweak it? Let me drop something on the marble. Let me just do something to ruin the marble. And the marble,
marble, that just made me cry.
It was
were decorating. We had moved during the pandemic, and we were renovating at that time. And I was writing that scene when we were picking out the marble for the bathroom. And I ended up going with leathered granite for that. I was like, no, if I put the marble in, something's going to happen to it. We better do granite. We better do something a little more safe.
It's so funny because so many people, like, they'll do their kitchen. Like, we always talk about doing our kitchen over, then we look, oh, so much work. Like, we'll keep half, but we don't want the other half to change. But it looks like so much work. And then people are saying, did you do poured concrete? Did you do this? And I was like, those are way too many things for me to learn right now. I have not have time to learn all the possibilities. And we have a friend who is a big designer out in Colorado. And we go into the house, and we went in one time, and she had this beautiful stucco up on the walls. And it was this fascinating color. And we said, how did you get it? She goes, it's coffee. And we're like, what? And she goes, I got it to do with the exact color I wanted was with coffee. So they're coffee grounds. And if you sat in the house long enough, you smelled the coffee.
No.
So my husband goes, well, what are you going to do if you don't like these walls anymore? Like, what is going to happen? She goes, we'll move. I was like, so I painted the walls of my copper, but my walls of my house, in my office rather, are copper. You can just barely see it there.
That's gorgeous.
My husband says, well, what are we going to do? And it has this nice shine as the day goes on. He says, well, what are we going to do with it someday? I said, we'll just have to be like Star. We'll have to move. But it's true. Like, when you get into making those decisions, and when she's seeing something like that, she's crafting in the house or whatever. Yeah, it does become a really big deal. I mean, it becomes a really big deal. The media is not all over that. She's got this huge problem she's coming home with. And instead it's, the reporters are at the door too. Like, let's see something else going on.
Yeah.
So are there really forums for the donor kids? Like, do they really try to find each other? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. The sibling donor registry is usually the biggest one. And that's, and on 23andMe and Ancestry, there's all kinds of places for them to get together. But the sibling donor registry is definitely one of the bigger ones. You can go in there and, that's where large groups are finding each other. It's incredible.
And you think about Park never had like a sleepless night thinking about this, like never really worried about Ancestry or 23andMe, and never worried about all these people finding each other. And he seemed to feel like every college kid is like, oh, it was like one and done. And there's a child out there somewhere, but who knows where. And when they've got these donor kids, do they segregate them by location, or what ends up, like, I know that, Discord was one of the social media platforms that they went out and they were talking to each other on. But once you get on there, is it, this is like, we found each other how? Like, that's what I'm curious about.
Well, so it started in the book, it started on Ancestry. She was able to put, into the database and started getting hits. She was looking for her donor father. Mm-hmm. Her mother was absolutely adamant that she not be in touch with him, only because she chose to have this life and he chose not to be contacted. So legally, they can't contact him. Mm-hmm. And so she's always, so we're talking about Darby and Scarlett. So they are additional characters in here. Darby is a donor mother and Scarlett is a donor daughter. Mm-hmm. And Scarlett is really the one that kind of blows the lid off of all of this. She's 16 years old. She's incredibly precocious, really great with computers and everything. And she's the one that has found a bunch of these siblings and pulling them together. So, you can, when you get donations, you can buy it from any place. So it's not like, everybody is necessarily going to be in the same city. It can, mm-hmm. If it's a big regional center, a well-established one, a well thought of one, a lot of people from the same town could go there. So conceivably, everybody could be related.
Wow.
Wow. Again, you're kind of at the mercy of the company and their ethics and how they approach things. And there are a lot of incredibly ethical companies out there. I mean, we're making it sound so splashy and so headliney, and that is certainly not the norm. This is not the norm.
We have to make it thrillery, though.
It has to be a thriller, right? That's how you make it into a thriller. It's how you make an everyday story of, hey, I can't seem to make this work myself. I have to bring in another help, there's egg donors, there's sperm donors, there's, surrogates. There's a lot of ways to make a family.
Mm-hmm.
And, 99% of them are completely ethical. It's the 1% that then we take and twist and write about.
Yeah, the 1% is the one that end up in the books. Everybody else is completely a joke.
Everybody else is fine.
Everything else is just fine. I was really thinking, though, because they could be coming from all over the country. Like, you could find these siblings are now all over the country. Also, people move. So you could have been here and moved there later on or whatever. I love that they were using Discord, because it's one of the social media platforms I'm less familiar with. But this is not, I felt like, something that was going to happen on Facebook, or it wasn't going to happen on, first of all, the kids aren't going to be on there, and they're not going to be on there having this conversation. And the other feels like it's a little bit like the early days of the internet. It's a little less, let's say, glitzy or whatever. And it's reminding me of those early days with chat and message boards, which was completely different from what we're dealing with now. Right. And did you want to go back to kind of those, stripping it back to the barest of, this is exactly, they're just communicating. It's nothing else but having conversations with each other.
Well, I checked with a friend of mine whose son was this age and into computers. And I said, they wouldn't have a Facebook group, right? That's for us old folks. And she was like, oh yeah, no. I asked him, and he said they would have a Discord server. I was like, that makes perfect sense. So that was a research find on my own. I knew of Discord before that. I'm in a couple of Discord groups, but that was the place that he was like, yes, this is what they would be doing. I was like, okay, perfect. Well, it's fascinating. It's all decentralized, right? We've decentralized social media. Now, you can find your people anywhere. Mm-hmm. You can find a community anywhere on any of these platforms. I mean, we saw it as Twitter kind of blew up a few months ago. Mm-hmm. And everybody was like, oh my God, I'm going to be on Mastodon, and I'm going to be on Hive, and I'm going to be here, and I'm going to be there. And then everybody came back to Twitter, because all of those were just way too decentralized. You couldn't find anybody.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's turning into the small pocket of your cohort instead of the broad that we have gotten used to.
Well, when we started the company, we were on AOL. And our choices at the beginning in 1995, 1996 was AOL, CompuServe, and Prodigy. Just think of that. And that was where everybody was, except the really tech people that were out on, I forget what else it was called. There were other places they would go. And then all the kids went to Facebook. And then, everybody went to, before that, MySpace. Everybody went to MySpace. And then everybody went to, and as the kids migrated and made it big, they would then leave and go to the next thing. So now they're up to TikTok. And by the time everybody else inhabits TikTok, then we'll be on to the next thing. I mean, I always joke that TikTok, if the Chinese are watching us, they've got to think we're most lunatic people that just dance and sing all day long and hold things up and talk about them like everyone is doing a commercial. It's just very, very funny, because you don't do that on any other platform quite the same way.
No.
But you're right. Like on Discord, it's more conversation. It's more, we're going to talk about a topic, or we're going to do this. Whereas everything else has become a show. It's like, so of course they're going to go there because they're just going to talk. It's like, what's up? They're just going to go out there and talk on wherever they're going to be. It's not going to be something else.
Yeah. That's interesting. It is. Everything changes. I can't keep up. I am not dancing on TikTok because I think it would burn people's eyes. I really don't think it would be a good thing for me to do.
Somebody said, I think you'd have a lot of fun on TikTok. I said, I think I'd have no fun on TikTok. I said,
it's hard for me. It gives me kind of a really bad headache, the constant change.
Yes.
So I haven't been able to, I have a platform and we put up videos, but I personally can't be in there for very long because it gives me migraine.
Well,
it's really uncomfortable.
How much do you actually watch these days? How much do you actually scroll? And there was an interesting piece that was on, we're a little bit off topic, but we'll get back to topic, I promise, folks. But there was a top about kids and depression recently. One of the kids said the thing that he changed the most is he stopped being online for scrolling for 6 hours a day and went down to 1, and it totally changed his thoughts. And you can see on engagement has changed recently because you see people, since we went back to real life, are pulling back on a lot of these things that were not in real life. They were just these places where you were just putting up pictures and doing that. And I'm watching that. I'm probably putting up less personally than I used to. But besides that, I can scroll just so long. And then I go to the people I'm looking for. But I think discovery that way has become a lot different than it was even a couple of years ago, even just before the pandemic.
I mean, we were all locked up in our houses and had nothing to do, and everybody was bored, and it was fun. And it was a way to connect with people and be silly in a time of great tragedy. And I mean, I have no problem with TikTok. I think it's fun. I just can't do it for very long because it's so quick. But it's, it is interesting. There was an article this week, somebody, I forget her name, was saying she doesn't understand why the book people haven't come to TikTok. And there is a lot there for book people, but I also think older book people like the quiet of sitting down with a book. Exactly. That's what they're doing. They're more there with their book instead of looking for new shiny things to read. So I don't know if it's going to sustain. I don't know how it sustains for a really long time.
Well, look at AOL and Prodigy and CompuServe.
Yeah, I mean, everything has its moment.
Everything has its moment. Everything has its moment of being the thing to sit there and be talking about and be of the moment. There are topics that end up in books that are the topics of the moment. And what I found was really interesting about this book is I was thinking about a lot of different topics that I wouldn't normally think about when I'm sitting and reading a thriller. So thank you very much. Like I'm sitting there like, whoa, what if all these things did happen? What if there is somebody and all these schizophrenic children are running around, or you find out that your brother is really your biological brother and you're not half siblings, you're full siblings, and you didn't know that, and you're the mother and you don't know that. And it's not what you were planning to produce. Let's put it that way. That's not what you're planning to do.
I mean, this whole book, I think on every page, after every chapter, you can set it down and say, what would I do? Exactly. What would I do if this was me? What would I do if I was faced with this situation? Because this is a complicated book. There are a lot of layers. I think there's 8 point of view characters, and they all have something going on. Park is the center, right? Park and his sperm donation back in college is the center post of this book, and then everybody else ripples around him. Everything that happened because he did that ripples out to all of these people. And I was really interested in seeing how that would work, right? That we weren't just seeing one perspective of what this was, that we were seeing from everybody's perspective. The police who are investigating this case, the brother who is in love with the wife and hasn't seen her in years. We've got, the mother, the daughter, we even had the murderer. It's fun for me. That was really fun for me to try to, come at it from a bunch of different angles and have every single one of those characters be someone that someone can sit down and look at and say, wow, what would I do if I was Scarlett? What would I do if I was Olivia? That was very purposeful on my part.
Yeah. And also her best friend is the sister of her husband. So she's got this best friend. The brother is somebody that you'll find out something had happened with along the way. He's been away. He's come back. What is happening just by the fact he walks back in the room with Olivia and the brother and Park? Like what ends up happening? And from there, you start doing this, wait a second now, what could be happening with all of these people? When put them all in a room, and what's it going to mean for everybody? Because everybody's got a little bit of shared history back here that some of it you know and some of it you don't. And the 8 different points of view, I think if they are 8 different points of view, did you write each one, or tell us how you wrote this? How did you say, I know exactly who this character is, let me move his story along? Or was it completely linear? Linear. You know the word I'm talking about. Was it linear?
Linearly. Yeah. It was a little bit of both. As I started layering things in, I did move chapters around because I needed things to flow in a different way. So I wrote it in a more linear fashion. I wrote this in big chunks of time. Okay. I would sit down and get 7,000 words, and then in a day, and then I wouldn't touch it for a couple of weeks. It's not how I normally write. Normally I chip away at it, every day. Right. But this one, it was hard. It was hard to revisit a lot of the emotions that are in the book. But it was also just, I was really in it. And then I would pull back and be out. And so when I was out, I would be able to see, okay, here's where this piece needs to fit. So I did do a lot of weaving in the end once the draft was together. And then even after we got into editorial, I reordered and changed the order of some things because, you want it's a thriller, right? So the reader knows more about what's happening than the characters do. Mm-hmm. The characters are kind of siloed, and then they're interacting with one another, and that's how they're finding out the story. But you as the reader already kind of know what's happening. Mm-hmm. And I know that's, some people love that, some people hate it. The mystery is when you and the reader are, the reader and the writer or the character are finding out the story at the same time. Mm-hmm. That's the huge difference between a mystery and a thriller. It's really, really big difference. The intellectual puzzle versus the multi-view, of this. So I had to go back and make sure that it was all massaged properly. Every reveal, every chapter was a reveal, mm-hmm. regardless of who it was coming from, so that the reader doesn't get bored, be like, all right, they're finally figuring this out. The reader needs to be able to have a reveal on every page too.
Yeah. And they cannot be in the last 20 pages and say, oh boy, the book till then. Oh, that's what ended up happening. Got it. Now, folks. Yeah. Now I figured it out.
It was a complicated book to write. And I did not do it all linearly.
Literally. Very good. Okay. Did you ever go back and read, this might sound crazy, all the chapters that were the wife, like just read them all together, even though they're going to be separated as the book goes on? Does that ever happen, that you just go back and read a character to say, or is it always just to the service of the story is where the character goes? So that you're not saying, I better go read all those Park chapters. Or let me go read all the wife chapters. The husband, the wife, whatever. Do I have to do that? Or is it more just rereading to see how the story unfolds?
I mean, it's rereading to see how the story unfolds and to make sure that each beat is in the right place. I have written books in the past with multi-point of view that I've written, a lot of one character and then a lot of another character and a lot of another character and then woven them together. So there's always a little bit of that too. It's, how the sausage is made is really kind of,
it can be different on each book.
Interesting, but ugly.
Yeah. The other thing I love this line that Perry says at one point, I've got it. And he said he's used to hauling his life around with him. He's the ultimate turtle. And it's interesting to think about him like that because he has things to hide as well. But to sit there and say that particular line about himself, the ultimate turtle, I love that because he just pulls inside his shell and then peeks out, and especially with what his work is. So let's talk a little about him. Perry is Park's brother. The people who start with P are related. Here we go.
Yeah, I did that on purpose, actually. And I know I've been dinged on it a couple of times, Perry and Park, because when I grew up in a place, it was called Perry Park. And I had always said if I had twin boys, I was going to name them Perry and Park. So it's just a very personal thing. And I know a lot of people hate the alliteration. I'm sorry. It was working for me.
It totally works, especially when you're totally the background on it. It totally works.
But I have to give my best friend Laura Benedict credit for the turtle line, because she showed up for a weekend at my house. I think it was the first time she had come to stay with me. And we went to get her bags out of the back of the car, and she had like 90 suitcases. I mean, I'm exaggerating. It wasn't 90, but she had, multiple suitcases. She had groceries. She had all of this stuff and she goes, I'm the ultimate turtle. And I'm like, oh my God, that's hysterical. And here it is all these years later. Cause I mean, that was like 15 years ago. I finally was able to use the line in a book.
It's like, it was perfect line. It's like, this is like, so funny.
Yeah, it was awesome.
So we're talking about the chapters all, like how they all came together and whatever. That prologue, you've got this very strong prologue at the beginning of the book. Was that always there? Or was that something, sometimes people go back and write the prologue later? Or was that your setup going into the book?
It was my second try at the prologue. I had written one prologue and just given it proof of life to my agent. So she knew that I was actually, I had actually written something on this book. And I could tell she wasn't in love with it. I could just tell that she wasn't in love with it. And I was like, all right, I need to level this up. This whole book needs to be elevated. And the only way to do that is to elevate the prologue. So I know readers don't necessarily like prologues a lot of times. They're very important to me, just setting the stage and setting the tone of the book. And it sets the stage, it sets the tone. Mm-hmm. And it is from the point of view of the dead woman who is in a lake. And it was incredibly challenging to write. And it was very poetic for me. I really liked it. And I was encouraged to take it out. And I said no, because I really felt like it was vital to the story to frame this entire story so you have an idea of what you're getting yourself into. There's going to be a lot. And it has, it goes in pieces, right? It goes back and forth between the people and people that are involved in finding this body and all of it. And it just, I don't know, I kind of dug it. I had a really cool opening to Lie to Me. That it was one of those, every once in a while you write something you're actually proud of. You're like, wow, can't believe I did that. Wow, man, you're not bad. Maybe somebody should pay you to do this. So I wanted
on a shelf someday.
To that. I was trying to level up with this book, craft wise and voice. And I knew the topic was going to be different and sensitive and all about it. So it needed to have something huge to really make a statement to start. And that's how I ended up with this. And my agent liked it a lot better the second time around.
I was like, oh yeah, I get it now. Well, it's funny. I often tell people to go back and read the prologue at the end, because once you finish the whole book, go back and read the significance of that. And yours is actually a long prologue. Sometimes it's a paragraph, a couple of paragraphs, it's a page, 2 pages. This was a much longer prologue. So I really realized it was important. Like this was going to be something that would play through right at the end, right to the end. And I think that a lot of times writers write things for a reason. It's not just because they have to get a page count in there. So and if they're doing it just for the page count, somebody else is going to take it out. An agent or an editor is going to take it out. So let's say, you're not going to get that 120,000 words in there. So you might as well just make every word count of what's going on. So you really do go back sometimes. I do go back a lot and reread those and say, now I get what was going on.
Yeah.
Now I got it.
I do the same thing. I always like to see how people are framing it. I mean, whether they're just trying to give you a hint as to what's going on, or like in this one, it is setting a stage for you. It's like you're a play that's getting ready to unfold, and somebody comes out on stage to prepare you for what's getting ready to happen, because a lot's getting ready to happen in this book. When you read that prologue, I want you to be going, what is about to happen?
Right.
Wow. Right.
Oh,
that's its goal.
You definitely did that.
Thank you.
Nashville's also the setting. I know you live there. Nashville, in this area. What draws you to write about the place that has changed so much over the years? I mean, whoever thought that bachelorette parties would be cool going to Nashville? I mean, just really, seriously, think 15 years ago, 12 years ago. How much? I know.
It's incredible how it's changed. When we moved here, my husband's from Nashville, so this was a move home for him. And so we came back in 98. So we've been here a while, and it has changed so dramatically. We didn't even have, Skemmerhorn or any of the stadiums or anything. We had the hockey. We had hockey at Bridgestone Arena, which was called something else back then. I don't even remember what, but so we got hockey tickets. That was like the only thing that we could do. There was just nothing other than going and seeing music. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of great music. And there was a lot of great food. It's funny, my Taylor Jackson books are kind of a time capsule of Nashville, what it used to be.
Got it.
Because now going downtown, it's insane. It's like a safe New Orleans.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. My younger son was there, and he said he really had a great time. He says, and I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed New Orleans. And he had done both on the same trip. Yeah. And he said, no, it was a much more fun city to be in. And I said, okay, that's interesting, And
there are throngs of people. I mean, throngs. We used to be able to go down and, Broadway was empty. It was always empty. And there was a little bit of nightlife on First Avenue. It was like, woohoo. Yeah. And now it's like, 5-block radius of just hotels and restaurants and tourists and people setting up smoke shops on the street. And it is wild.
It's wild.
And I'm absolutely wild.
A few times I've been there, I think we went to Opryland because there was always a conference out there where I would always get lost the entire time.
Oh yeah. That thing's huge.
Well, they would say, let's go meet at for those who haven't been to Opryland, just so you know, they each have like different settings throughout the entire hotel. So you're out there and you might be in the back to like nature kind of a place. And then you might be in, And I just remember going there, and I would always be in the wrong restaurant in the wrong village, because there were these, let's say, a collection of villages, and I was always in the wrong village. But it was the place you went if you went to Nashville, because there was no downtown scene quite the same way, except for music. And then all of a sudden it became a city that nobody goes to anymore for conferences, because it's expensive. If you go there, you're going to be spending a lot of money. And I always say,
it's incredibly pricey. It's I tell you though, it is worth coming. We've got brilliant food. I mean, the food scene's just off the hook.
And
the music is still great, and the people are cool. Just don't move here. We don't need any more people here. Come visit.
I'll come visit. If I come visit, I'll let you know. I promise.
Okay, good.
And you can tell me all the great places to go. You know what I mean? So the story does have very personal roots for you that you write towards the end. And I didn't know that till I got to the very, very end. And what made you decide to do this story now? Like, why? Like, do you say, I could have ripped the Band-Aid off and write this story now at this point in your life?
Yeah, it was a little more than ripping off Band-Aids. It was kind of like sitting here with razor blades every day, cutting myself open. It was not easy to write. It was not easy to revisit. And I really put a cap on that. You know, when you're going through infertility, when you're doing fertility treatments, wow. I mean, it's a full-time job. I actually took almost 6 months off writing while we were doing the IVF portion, because it was just, I mean, everything's timed. You have to be here. You have to have these eggs measured. You have to have this happen. I was touring when we did an IUI. I was out with Alex Cava in Omaha, and I triggered early, and my husband had to fly to Omaha so they could do an insemination in between our events. It was crazy. It was just crazy time.
Right.
Obviously, I mean, the elephant in the room, it didn't work. It didn't work. We don't have children.
Right.
And was both Olivia walking on the beach, coming to me and realizing this is her story and I need to tell it. I had switched agents, and I knew I needed something slam bam, attention grabbing to work on with her. It's a very female driven story, and I needed a female agent for this, very much so. And, you know, you build up a callus over time. Time does make things easier to discuss. But in all honesty, it was Paula McLean and her essay that she did about her growing up when her book came out, When the Stars Go Dark.
Yeah.
Is that the right title?
I think that was.
It's close. It's close if it's not.
Yeah, it's close.
But she did an absolutely gut-wrenching story, a personal essay in the New York Times about the abuse that she suffered as a child and going into the system and all of the things that happened to her. And I read that and I said, okay, if she can lay herself bare like that, I can do this. Because we just hadn't told a lot of people. I mean, I have very good friends who are finding out about this now. And they're like, why didn't you tell us? It's like, well, what was I going to tell you? I mean, they're like, we could have helped. I'm like, no, you couldn't. There's nothing you could have done. Right. It was just our cross to bear at the time. So seeing Paula's bravery made me brave. And I decided I was going to try it.
Right.
And I then decided I wasn't going to turn the book in because I didn't want to have to come out and talk about it and talk about these things. Obviously, that didn't turn over very well. I had to turn the book in, and it's turning into a conversation that I'm able to have. I can't talk well about what it's like to have children, but I can talk about what it's like to lose them. And it's time for us to have those conversations, to destigmatize miscarriage, destigmatize infertility, to normalize this conversation around infertility, sperm donor, surrogacy, the many ways that you can make a family, the many ways that you can have a good and joyful life without a family.
Exactly.
You don't have to have children to be a happy person and have a happy marriage. You just don't have to have that. So if I can help even just one woman who is going through this right now, who is in the throes, to know that there is life on the other side, there really is, then that is my job and my service right now, is to let people know that you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay.
I do think about it. When you get married, the first thing people say, when are you going to have children?
When are you going to have children?
Why haven't you had children yet? Oh, are you not having children because you're writing that book? Are you not having this, this? And I think the one thing I've learned is I say nothing to anybody about their status, about having children, not having. Sometimes I say, do you have children? Just because, it'll come up and they'll say no. And then I don't pursue it further because sometimes it's just like, okay, you're going to understand why I'm going nuts right now about the dishes on the table or something like that my sons have done. But other than that, you don't pry. And yet I think that our parents' generation definitely was like, oh, what's going on? Why not children already?
What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?
Yeah. Or don't
that
you
was the question. What's wrong with you? Don't you want them? Oh my gosh. So then we get into the world where it's like everybody understands what a great path adoption is. And so, you tell somebody, yeah, I've had a bunch of miscarriages, and they're like, oh, well, why don't you just adopt? Like, do you have any idea? Like, you can go to the store and pick them out like a puppy.
Right.
They're all sitting in cages and you can just go grab one.
Right.
No, it's not like that. I mean, that takes money and time and effort and heartbreak.
Right.
It's just, so that's why we just didn't tell people, because people think they're helping when they're making those kinds of suggestions, and bless them for it. But wow, there is nothing worse than, I had a miscarriage. Oh, well, why don't you just adopt?
Yeah.
No, I never thought about that.
Never
crossed my mind.
I will share that there was one friend who had been for a number of IVFs and, just done everything. And they said, we're really going to adopt. Can you help us, fill out all this paperwork? And he calls me and he says, stop the paperwork. And I said, what? You decided you're not going to do this? And I think they were going to get a child from Vietnam or something like that. And we're going on and on. And I goes, no, she's pregnant. I was like, really? I said, I didn't know you did it for IVF, but I just burst out laughing, because if you knew how diligently I was filling out this paperwork, and I'm like, really, I don't have to do this anymore? Like, I was really selling the two of you. I was doing a really good job about that. It was really funny, So you're reading this book that's, you're going to read it again and again and again. And that's so, it's bringing the heartbreak up again and again and again. Was there a moment where you said, you were thinking, I'm not going to publish this, I'm not going to do this, where an author, an agent and publisher going, but you have this contract thing, you've got to do this. Was it hard going over and over? At some point, does the callus start to build up a little bit more because you knew what was going on with characters?
So no, it was really hard. Actually, one of my friends said, you know what, because I still had like 2 rounds of edits to go. And, in the end, you're just making sure that all the periods are in the right place, right? So you're just reading. And she goes, you've done your job. You don't need to read this anymore. You just don't need to read this anymore. Because, it's hard.
Right.
But I've been more dreading the tour. I've been just absolutely, not happy about the fact that, oh God, I got to go out and talk about this. I've been really worried about it until now I'm doing it. And it's like all the pressure is off. It's kind of like your friend that got pregnant when they stopped trying IVF. That is exactly what happens, right? It's like once you're there and it's like all the pressure comes off and it's like, oh my gosh, I can talk about this.
Right.
I'm stronger than I thought. So that's been really empowering for me, because people's sympathy kind of sets me off.
Yeah.
That's really hard for me. Compassion. And talking about these things. I mean, people just, your natural reaction is to be compassionate. Right. It's a hard thing, right?
So sorry, Yeah.
Right. And it's like, you can't say, well, it's okay, because it's not. I mean, it'll never be okay. But I was really scared about how I was going to talk about this and how to do it. And it was the moment that I realized, wait a second, you might be able to help somebody. You might be able to change how somebody is going through this if they know that there is life on the other side. A good, joyous, full, wonderful life.
Yeah. Read the editor's note. Read the editor's note and just sit there and say, here's where I am right now. I am able to sit and talk about this, and you just hope the questions are good on stage. You know what I mean? When you're on stage, it's totally
well, I've already had a couple of big events, and I will admit I made some people cry. So I think I did okay.
You nailed it. You totally nailed it. Okay. So when a storyline hits a wall, and you go in the weeds, what do? Do you walk away? Do you keep going?
I go out on tour.
I gotta go now.
I was talking to my agent earlier today. I'm like, okay, Books on life support, and I'm going to just take a break from it right now because I can't think about this story because I'm so far into Olivia and Park right now.
Right.
It's usually invariably, if I start slowing down and there's been a day and then another day that I haven't written on it and then another day, it's because I've done something wrong with the story. And I know exactly, I did that. I changed something absolutely intrinsic to the story a few weeks ago and then just went. So I got to go change it back. I got to take that out because that obviously is not true to the story. I've gone in the wrong direction. And that's what block is. There's real block. I mean, there's definitely, true artistic block. You lose somebody in your family. There are things that hold you back from writing. But when it's just a regular thing and I'm thinking and working on like 90 other projects.
Yeah.
Usually it's because I've gone the wrong direction. And either on this one that I'm working on, I changed from first person to third, and that sort of to slow it down. And then I changed a big plot point, and I gotta throw that out. It's just killed it. It killed it dead. And that happens, right?
It happens. And that's what makes it better. By realizing that's the wrong way to go, you often end up in a better direction. Also, you're going to probably be traveling a lot. And I find that traveling is very good because it clears your head, because you can get on an airplane and you can't do anything for those 10 minutes or 15 minutes or ridiculously long before you take off. And you can't have the phone on. You can't have anything on. It's just you and your head, maybe with a pencil and a piece of paper. And sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, that's like the best idea. How did I not come up with that one before? How did I not think we should be doing that with the site? Where did I? No.
Right. I mean, I love planes. I write really well on planes. I've threatened before to, like, when I'm on deadline, go fly around the world.
Oh,
because I mean, I would totally nail that deadline. Right. It's just, there's something about, maybe it's just the thinner air. I don't know, but I work really well on planes.
It's a lot of lack of distraction. It's a lot of lack of distractions.
It's not that people expect you to answer them all the time, but I think our own feeling of we need to be available and responsive and whatever you need, sure, I'll handle it. Yeah, you're on a plane, it's like dispensation for a couple hours. Nobody is expecting anything. So I like to work on the weekends. I really like working on the weekends because I know nobody's going to be blowing up my email with something.
Yeah. That's me working at night. I try not to come in this office too much on the weekends. I read on the weekends, but at night, it's like, I'll just sit and write. I'll just sit and do everything I've got to do because nobody's going to be asking me a question. And people are going to come to me with questions all day long. That's my job. My job is to answer those questions and move things along. And there's sometimes I'm just like, I'm going to get nothing done. If I, like, even writing questions for you this morning, I was just saying to like, no one talked to me for like an hour because I have all this stuff. I've got to put these things together. It's not going to go the right way. So, but okay. So you finish writing, you've got this something together. You've got enough together. Agent sees it first. Editor sees it simultaneously. What do you do?
Dad sees it first.
Oh, okay.
My dad's my first reader. I always want him to look at something and make sure that, it holds together. He's the one that's given me some of my best advice over the years as far as, the work. The very first bit of advice he gave me when I was struggling, he was like, just get the story down. You can deal with the rest later. Right. So that was when I was writing my first book. And that was what he told me. And I was like, wow. So between him and my husband hears things and sees things and reads things as I go.
Okay.
My dad's the first one that reads the whole thing. Okay. I mentioned Laura Benedict. She also is one of my first readers. I have a couple of experts who I've got a death investigator who reads for me. Her name is Sherry Saint. She's an absolute, saint is the perfect. Yeah, she really is a saint. Yeah. So a few people see it before I give it to my agent, and then she and my editor will get it and everything. I don't like to show people until I'm ready to show them because I add when I edit instead of subtracting. So what I send out and let people see is usually so bare bones. And it's like, just tell me if the story, does the character resonate? Does the story hold together? Did I get the cause of death? Does crime scene look right? That kind of stuff. And then I take it back and I mess with it myself and I get it to where, I probably do 4 or 5 drafts before I let the professional team look at it.
And then they send you notes and you go from there on those notes.
Yeah. I've been with the same editor for a really long time. So she kind of knows what I'm doing, what I'm about, how things will change if we need to change things. I write pretty clean though. I don't have to do, I don't get 12-page editorial letters anymore. That's, yeah, like, right. I've never gotten a 12-page editorial letter. I can't even imagine.
I can't even do that.
That would break me in half.
Are you still writing series books? And forgive me for not knowing the answer to that. You still doing that too?
So yeah. Yeah. It's
okay.
The standalone, right. I'm sorry. Dead air. I have written the next Taylor Jackson novel, and it will be out imminently.
Okay.
I need to get through this release first.
Yes.
Yeah. It's interesting. The series, my publisher really pushed me away from doing the series. They really wanted me in standalone. It's an easier sell-in. I have to take it as a compliment that they feel like I've got enough talent to pull off the large suspense standalones. I mean, it's a different world. It's a different writing experience than it is with series. I mean, the series, everything's there, right? It's already built for you. You're just plugging in plots. Right. And I make the joke, how many serial killers can Nashville have, right? There comes a point where if you're writing a police procedural, you strain credulity. You have to change it. You have to move. John Sanford's done a really great job with this, right? He's moved Lucas Davenport through a number of iterations in different jobs and different areas to keep him fresh. And you have to do that. I knew where I wanted Taylor to go, but I didn't have the publishing support to do that because the standalones have been taking up a lot of the air in the room. Sure. But I have so many readers who love Taylor, and I get emails all the time. When are you going to put another Taylor book out? So I wrote one last year. Okay. In the intervening, I turned this one in. I had 18 months. So I wrote a bunch of short stories and I wrote a Taylor novel. So I'm putting it out myself. Oh, so okay. I'm kind of excited about that.
It's a whole different way to do it. Yeah.
I mean, I have a small press. I have my own small press because I've got a pen name that I publish urban fantasy with my press. And it's a direct line to the readers. The readers are the ones that want this book. And so I am going to give them what they want.
Ready audience out there waiting for it, actually waiting for it. Do you write on a schedule? Okay. So I also see a lot of books behind you. How do you have time to read as well as write? Like, do you write during the day? Do you write because my reading time is really late at night and weekends. It's really not during the day. There is no divan here that I just lay myself down on and say, let me just have another book, please, and pour me a glass of wine. No.
Oh, and hand over the bonbons. Oh, do I not wish? I read every time I can, right? So I like to read over breakfast, especially if I'm reading something that I'm just totally entranced with. I'll read before I come and work on my own stuff. If I'm entranced, I'll read at lunch. I'll read after, when I work out. I'll listen to a book. You have to make the time to read. It's you become stale as a writer if you don't read and you don't stay up to date with all the new authors. I mean, oh my gosh, so many new talented authors. It blows my mind how much talent is out there.
Right.
So I love reading it. I've got a TV show that I have to read for. So that's, 15 episodes a year that I do. And I have to read the books for that. And so you just make time, right?
I meant to ask you about that at the back of the book. There's a show at the back of the book. Is that like a little homage to that, The Man with Many Faces, the documentary strip? And forgive me, I don't know what show you do. So maybe our listeners don't as well. So tell us what show you do.
So I have, it's a TV show here in Nashville called A Word on Words. John Siegenthaler was the host for 40 plus years. And he was actually my very first interview ever for my first novel. And I ended up being on the show a number of times over the years because local author, easy access. And he really loved Taylor. He really loved Taylor so much. So we, when he passed away, the station didn't want the show to go away. And so the producer at the time, Linda Way, reimagined it into a short, snappy, more internet friendly show. So it airs between some of the big shows.
Okay.
So it's a little, 3-minute episode. We now also have a podcast, a Word on Words podcast. And then the full video is on YouTube. So it's, we got a bunch of bites at the apple, but it is our local PBS affiliate. And it is just one of the greatest honors of my life to carry on John Siegenthaler's literary legacy in Nashville. It's pretty incredible.
Fantastic. So you
co-host with Jeremy Finley, who is absolutely amazing. And yeah, we have a lot of fun.
So do you interview just authors? Do you do just authors? Okay.
Yeah, it's all literary, and it is more literary. It's when we were doing during the pandemic, when we were shooting from home, it was great. We could broaden our reach a little bit and pull in people that didn't come to Nashville, but we usually shoot, either on location or in studios. So now it's people who come through Nashville. We grab them, usually the day of their book signing, and have them in and do an interview, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I like it a lot. I would have never in a million years, if you would ask me, when you're grown up, are you going to be a TV host? I'd be like, no.
And I'm sitting there reading all the cues and everything on the side that people have no idea go into all of this. It's like the audio up, this, that, the narrator says this, that says that. You're never quite sure,
Right. So I wrote a documentary of this book that is in the back of the book. So it's only several scenes of the documentary, but obviously this is such a splashy story that a documentary has to be made.
Right.
So I went ahead and wrote the script for it just for fun. And yeah, that's in the back of the book, just a little bonus. It furthers the story.
It does.
and I will say that the last line of the documentary was that vision that I had in the very beginning. So I didn't get to even write it until the very, very end of the book.
Ooh. So it was like there and there's, there's what it was, everybody. I love this. I love when I get to talk to an author and I finish the book and we can sit there and say, wait, I picked up this clue, or I got the turtle line, or I got this, that, the other thing. But
I appreciate the close read. It's incredibly nice of you to do.
What else didn't I know? What else did? Okay. So let's get to this. Was It's One of Us always the title?
No, it was not. It was not always the title. This has been called a number of things. The first title was The Many Faces of Me, which is the name of the documentary.
Right. Yes.
Many Faces of Me. It was something else. And then it was Never, Darling. And I was really in love with that title. And I was crushed when they decided that wasn't going to be the title, because it's perfect for the novel, but it didn't really scream what it is. So we ended up, it was my editor, my publisher, my agent, myself, we got on a Zoom and literally we were going through the book looking for lines that might fit. And I said, It's One of Us. And, they were like, oh, wait a second, say it again. It's One of Us. And we were all like, yeah, that's it.
That's the line. And we did this book at a Bookaccino live preview. We did it 2 months before it came out. We did it again when the month it came out. And as soon as you sit there and say to people, this is the name of the title, this is the title, and this is what the plot line's about, people get it immediately. Like they immediately know, oh, wow, that is really an amazing story. And you only have to do a couple of lines to describe the book. The book is much bigger than that, but those pull to get the people in. The title completely corresponds to it. Also, I went to find my little green sweater, so that kind of match. I'm like, worked on that.
Sweater on, and I changed it because I was taping reels, and so I had changed my sweater, and I forgot to put it back on. So You're way better than I am.
17 years at a fashion magazine. People say to me, what are you going to say? I say, what am I going to wear first? But I was in the closet going, where'd the sweater go? I was like, really just ducked in here right before you did. Okay, let's talk about the cover. Because I loved, let's see if I'm getting something. The cracked wall that's going through the word. So it's going of us. Okay. You got cracked. Yes. Okay.
So it's not a wall. It's actually a sidewalk. It's actually the garden path between the house and his shed.
Oh, good.
I thought it was a foundation too. I was like, oh, the cracks in the foundation, but it's actually the path, the garden path.
Okay.
Sean Capitan is my artist, and he's just brilliant. And we did an event in Toronto Wow. It's last fall. We did a preview event with a book club, and he went through the iterations of the covers. So I got to see the comps, and nobody, everybody was like, that's not it. And he and my editor talked at length about what she was looking for, what she thought it needed to be. And he came back with this, and it was like, done. He said it's the unicorn cover of the year. He has one cover a year that that's it. Boom. Everybody agrees, and they don't change a thing. And this was it.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Well, we're talking, because I think this might have been one of the covers people were looking at. We were talking in our Bookaccino live event that we want to do an evening event with a number of cover designers, and bring them on to talk about the different iterations that they did to come up with a book cover, and what they did and how they work and whatever. And we're going to probably need 4 to 5 people who can talk well about what they do. And we just think it'd be such an interesting evening for book lovers, because
include Sean.
Thank you. It's a good one.
He is incredibly well spoken. He's done a number of my covers. I mean, he's been doing my covers for years and years.
Wow.
Yeah.
No,
and he just really, he nailed it. It's just so perfect.
It completely brings you in, and it's visually appealing, especially in the depths of winter. Like we're saying, oh yeah, there's green.
Yeah, there's a little bit of moss in there.
There's moss somewhere.
Weeds.
The audio is narrated by Julia Whelan, who's just amazing. She's just amazing. And did you select her? Does she? And forgive me, I didn't see. Has she done your work before? Tell us about Julia and you.
She read one of the characters in Lie to Me.
Okay.
And did an amazing job. And she's just so. God to honest truth, I wrote Olivia with Julia's voice in mind.
Okay.
And I told her that I had written a book for her that I really desperately wanted her to read. And, you hate to put somebody on the spot like that. It's like, she's the most sought after. I mean, her and Britt Presley right now are like, Brittany Presley, Saskia Mollivart. I mean, there's some amazing narrators out there. And they've all done my work, and they're all incredible. But this Olivia in particular, I had Julia's voice in my head the whole time. And so I reached out to her, and I told her, I said, just be prepared. They're going to come. And I went to my publisher. I'm like, please, whatever you do, I need Julia to read this. And we went back and forth. It looked for a little while. They're like, that wasn't going to happen. And then they called me, and they're like, we have really great news. Julia's going to read the book. And I was just like, yes.
If not, hold the book for Julia.
There's something about the way she narrates. She just embodies the characters so incredibly well. And I mean, this is a book that would have done well with a cast, right? That have a male lead and a female lead, like they did with Lie to Me. We had all the point of view characters had their own voice. But she is more than capable of pulling this off. And I knew it. And I haven't heard it yet, but I'm dying to, because I know, we're a week out. Surely somebody can slide me an MP4, right?
I'm looking for something, because we're going to put it on. Those who are going to be listening to some podcast, you're going to get the clip at the end. So just know that you're going to be able to hear exactly how amazing Julia is. I mean, she really is terrific. Every single piece she does.
Really is. And her new book, Thank You for Listening, came out last summer. And everybody should read it, because it kind of upends the rom-com and gives it something deeply meaningful, and also talks really interestingly about how AI is changing the audiobook world.
It is.
I mean, that's just kind of fascinating to me. And so I hope everybody picks up her book and picks up the audio of this. It's really good.
We build websites for authors. It's something else that we do in our business. And we were talking to a designer the other day. She said, well, I'm going to have my AI assistant record this for me, take notes for me. And I was like, boy, I need an AI assistant. I need I want somebody
to slide me that link. That would be awesome.
Read me my mind? Could you read me my mind and tell me what I'm going to write in the newsletter open on Friday night, when I feel like I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, you guys do a book you do books. I sit there Friday night and write a newsletter and go, I got nothing to open this one up. I've got nothing. And I walk around the house going, I got nothing, It's
but
not
you always nail it. Your newsletter is fabulous. It's
thank you so much. Thank you. But there are times where I'm walking around, I'm like, just do something. One of the three of you in the house, just do something. I've got something to write about. And every once in a while, I do something that I take notes. And it's the reason I always ask authors, do you take notes all the time? Because during the week, I have a draft started and I put things in there, because at the end of the week, I never remember what I've watched. I never remember all these things that I've done. So I feel like I have to have this thing. So I'm always asking authors, like, did you write it on the cocktail napkin like I did? Did you?
I use Day One. It's a journaling app, and literally everything. I keep notes in there. I draft in there. I've got story ideas. I hashtag everything for search, so that I can go and find, every book has its own, I abbreviate by title. So this is IOU.
Yeah. I saw that on your site. I was like, I'm looking at the tour dates and I'm like, wait a second, what is this IOU?
What is IOU?
It's I get it now.
So whatever note taking you do is fine. Just be consistent with it. And I mean, I've got years of notes in Day One.
I will confess, I keep my calendar in Excel, and I bet you've never heard of anybody doing that. But
no, how do you do that?
To the next day. Just think about that. You set up your whole calendar for the year and you just move things to the next day. And you put long-term things out there. So, like, Winter Institute, which sadly I'm not going to in Seattle because I'm way too busy here. But you put things on that, that's that week, this is that week or whatever's going on. And I just find it's easy to move it to the next day because you don't have to rewrite it. You just, very easy to switch cells, folks. Very easy. Very easy.
I'll be at Winter Institute.
I know you're going to be at Winter Institute. That's the reason I'm bummed I'm not going to be there. It's like,
I'm bummed.
I know. I really am bummed. But I can't be away 5 days, even though it'd be such a great plane ride to Seattle. This is a sacrifice, folks, because 5 hours on a plane would have been really good right now. Really, really good. So, so you've got the book that's part of the series coming next.
Yes. Let's not talk about that.
Okay. And then what's next? Are you working on something? Are you up to editing the next thing? Where are we on the next book?
I'm still drafting the next book. I had really, really wanted to get it done before this book came out. And normally I would have, but it too is a complicated story. And this book, It's One of Us, has been just so front of mind for so long. Even when, it looked like, okay, book's done, don't have to do anything. Then we started touring and, doing events, and I was up in Toronto. And so I haven't had that stillness that I normally have going into a launch to be able to finish. So that's a big, long excuse for it's not done yet. So I'm still drafting it.
Yeah. But though, I think that right now readers are looking for quality books. They're willing to wait. And I think that some stuff is being churned out a book a year. And there's sometimes I read the year book and I just don't think it's that great. And I say maybe the next one's going to be better. There were a lot of books that were written during the pandemic. And I mean, during and came out the next year and whatever. They weren't really as strong as some of the other pieces from those authors. And I read a lot. And so I know the arc of an author's work a lot. And that was like here on the work as opposed to up here. And you can tell it was harder to do. It was harder to do at every level.
Yeah. Writing during the pandemic sucked. This was my pandemic book. I mean, I totally, I was deep into it. And that's been the other thing, I got so used to the quiet and the calm and we weren't going anywhere. We weren't traveling. We weren't going out to dinner. We were always home. And so, I really threw myself into the work. Now I've got all the normal distractions again. And it's like, wow, we are distracted in a new way than before the pandemic. It's definitely changed. But yeah, I'm like I said, I made a mistake in the book and killed it dead. So I now know what I did wrong. And I know who did it. And that I don't normally know who did it until almost the end. So I'm more than halfway and I know who did it. So I'm sort of ahead of the game. I'll get it done. I'll get it done.
Somewhere along the way, you'll make the notes of what you need and whatever. But I do agree. I also think that's going to be very interesting when people gather. For everybody who's listening, Winter Institute is when the American Booksellers Association, the independent booksellers get together with publishers and authors. And it's going to be in Seattle next week, which will be the week of February. I guess it's 20th to 24th, something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that everyone in a room is going to be exhausting because it will be more chatter than everybody is used to doing. Here you do an interview, even if you do 3 or 4 a day, even if you go do your show, it's done and over. But there, it's a dinner, it's a breakfast, it's a lunch, it's an ongoing thing. And I think we're out of practice on doing that. So when you get back, just drop me a note and go, Carol, yeah, it was exhausting or not.
Yeah, it is really interesting. Yeah, I'm an introvert anyway, so I have to gear up and turn on. And I was in Memphis last week, a huge literacy event that they do down there, and wow. Yeah, we're out of practice, right? It's just, that was a lot of people and a lot of talking and a lot of, I was just like, wow, really, you really are out of practice. So hopefully everybody will be out of practice together, right?
Oh, believe me, everybody's out of practice together. Nobody has had the amount of time together that we've all, thought about over the last couple of years. Oh, let's all go back out together. Be careful what you wish for. It's all
we just so, took that so for granted. It's amazing how different it is now. We have to, I know they were asking about what color lanyard you want to decide on how close you want people to be to. Green is, yeah, you're cool with handshakes. Yellow, let's do elbows and keep a little distance. Red is no touching, no, don't kind of keep your distance.
Right.
I did yellow because I've already had COVID twice and I've had some long COVID issues and I really don't want to get it again.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay.
Especially before the tour, before the big tour, before we go down for a lot,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, life is life of an author.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we finally got to talk. I've wanted to do this for years and the timing is just never done.
I so appreciate it. I appreciate the close read of the book too. That was a really great conversation and I love talking to you. Thank you for so much support on this.
Yeah, it's been so much fun. It really, really has been, which is one of our winter reading titles. And everybody I want to win. So it was really, really fun.
Yeah.
So thank you to you for joining us. To our readers, look forward to seeing you next time on Book Reporter Talks To, whether you're listening on podcast or you're watching on video. Thanks so much for joining us.